First step will be to remove the tunnel brace to access the OEM carrier. So remove the 2 bolts holding the carrier to the tunnel brace, and then remove the 6 bolts holding the tunnel brace to the vehicle. Next, we'll need to separate the carrier frame from the bearing by cutting the rubber all the way around. Once the frame is free from the bearing, we can pull it forward, then make 2 cuts. This will allow us to release the frame from the driveshaft. Next, trim down the center rubber rib on the bearing, leaving the base layer of rubber intact. Do not take the bearing all the way down to bare metal. So here's everything that could possibly come with your carrier. For sure, your carrier will come with the top and bottom halves, the 2 bolts that hold it together, the 4 isolation dampers, and then you'll get 2 driveshaft carrier clamping bushings. These are the ones that actually clamp around the bearing. Depending on which version you have, you may have some bushings that look like this, or you may have some that look like this. Doesn't change the process. In terms of hardware, this hardware set right here is what's going to come if you did not order the JXB tunnel brace. If you did order the tunnel brace, then you're going to get this set. The only differences between these 2 sets of hardware is we're swapping 2 nuts out for 2 washers with a larger inner diameter hole. First, I'm going to show you how to assemble this with the OEM tunnel brace. So you flip this over, then you're going to take a bolt, one of your small washers, going to go through these slots, flip this back. So this is your front side, and then the larger opening is the rear side. Now we'll take our isolation dampers, put the carrier on top, text facing forward. You may have to adjust these bolts in the slot a little bit to get them to line up best with the carrier. Now on the top side, we're going to put an isolation damper on, then we'll take our washer and then the nut on top. You might have to keep this lifted up a little bit to keep everything together. The clearance is really tight. Same thing on the other side here. Take your isolation damper, your washer on top, and then the nut on the very top. And that's how that stack up works. You'll notice though that because there are no holes in the OEM tunnel brace to access these bolt holes to tighten up the 2 halves of the carrier, you're going to have to do this all under the car. Basically, you're going to have to clamp this around the driveshaft first, then you'll attach the tunnel brace. Now we're going to do the JXB brace. This one installs a little bit different. You'll take your bolt and then one of your small washers. Then you're going to take your fender washer with the larger inner diameter, then put your isolation damper on. Go through one of these holes in the tunnel brace. Same thing on the other side. Bolt, small washer, larger diameter fender washer, isolation damper into the hole. Flip this over. This is the rear, keep in mind. On the top, we'll take our isolation damper facing down, then the smaller diameter fender washer on top. Same thing on the other one. Now this will simply screw into the bottom of the carrier frame. Now you can see when you use the JXB tunnel brace, you're going to have access holes here and here that are going to allow you to tighten up the carrier to the vehicle. So you can basically assemble this all right here on the bench, tighten the bolts up and everything, and then go over to the car. Continuing on with the JXB tunnel brace install, you're going to take your top half of the carrier with the bushing already installed, text facing forward, then bring the tunnel brace attached to the bottom half of the carrier up and connect the 2 together with the Allen bolts. As you're tightening up the bolts, switch back and forth from left to right so the bolts don't bind on the holes. A small gap may form between the bushings. This is normal. In order to do this install with the OEM tunnel brace, we'll need to gain some more clearance on top of the drive shaft in order to be able to tighten up the nut that's required to hold the carrier to the tunnel brace. So we'll have to lower the front half of the drive shaft. To do that, we'll need to disconnect it at the guibo. Take note for each bolt which side the washer is on. The washer should always be touching the guibo. Now take the top half of your carrier frame, install the bushing, and then put it over the drive shaft text facing forward. Bring the bottom half up to meet it. Connect the two together with an Allen wrench. As you're tightening the bolts, make sure to switch back and forth from left to right so the bolts don't bind on the holes. A small gap may form between the bushings. This is normal. We found the easiest way to attach the tunnel brace to the carrier is to preload everything you need up on top of the carrier. So put your isolation damper, your fender washer, and your nut up on top first. Same thing on the other side. Put your isolation damper, your fender washer, and your nut up on top. Same strategy on the tunnel brace. Take your small washer, put it on your bolt, and then slide the bolt up through the slot. Put an isolation damper on to hold everything in place. Repeat this for the second one. With everything in place, you can attach the tunnel brace to the carrier. Basically just take it up slowly and then start each of the nuts by hand. Do the final tightening with the opened end of a wrench.